They say life begins at 40, but mine was ending long before that. If you had met me 10 years ago, you would have called me lucky. A husband who worked hard, two children who filled the house with laughter, neighbors who envied the way I held everything together. To the world, I was the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect woman. But behind my smile lived a truth so heavy that sometimes I thought it would crush me. And the truth was this: I was married to a man who loved everyone except me. It didn't happen all at once. In the beginning, he was charming, attentive, the kind of man who brought flowers just because. But slowly, piece by piece, he stopped seeing me. He stopped hearing me. I became invisible in my own home. My words bounced off his silence. My needs drowned under his indifference. I told myself it was stress, that men change with time, that after 15 years of marriage, maybe this was just what love turned into: routine, silence, distance. But then I discovered something that tore the ground from beneath my feet. It was late one night. I had gone to his phone to check the time while he slept, and there it was, the message that shattered my world. "Good night, love. I can't wait to see you tomorrow." Not my name, not my number. Another woman. In that moment, my whole body froze. My fingers went cold, my chest tightened, my knees buckled. I wanted to scream, but all I could do was stare at the glowing screen, rereading those words again and again. Good night, love. Not me. Someone else. And suddenly the silence in our marriage made sense. The distance, the late nights, the coldness in his eyes when he looked at me. He hadn't just fallen out of love. He had given my love to someone else. The next morning, I sat across from him at breakfast, my hands shaking as I poured tea. He didn't notice. He never noticed anymore. And all I could think was, how long has he been lying to me? How long have I been living like a fool? But here's the cruel part. I didn't confront him that day, or the day after. I buried it. I smiled through it. I cooked his meals, washed his clothes, kissed his cheek when he came home late, all the while carrying the poison of betrayal inside me. Because I was terrified of losing the family I had built, terrified of breaking my children's hearts, terrified of being left alone in a world that already treated middle-aged women like they were invisible. So I stayed. I stayed with the man who had already left me in every way that mattered. But secrets don't stay hidden forever. And his betrayal, oh, it was only the beginning of the storm that nearly destroyed me. I thought I could bury it. I thought if I kept quiet, if I played the part of the good wife, things would somehow return to normal. But silence is not peace. Silence is poison. And every day I swallowed it, pretending not to taste the bitterness. It spread deeper into my soul. After discovering those messages, I couldn't look at him the same way. Every time his phone buzzed, my heart jumped. Every time he smiled faintly while scrolling, I wondered if it was her. Every late night at the office, every work trip, every unexplained call became a dagger twisting deeper. But I didn't say a word. At breakfast, I smiled while buttering bread for the children. At dinner, I passed him the salt, careful not to let my hand shake. At night, I lay beside him in bed, staring at the ceiling while he turned away, already lost in his dreams, or perhaps his thoughts of her. I told myself I was protecting the children, that they didn't need to see their parents fight, that they didn't need their home cracked open by betrayal. But children aren't fools. They feel what you try to hide. One evening, my daughter, only 12 at the time, looked up at me as I was folding laundry and asked softly, "Mama, why don't you laugh anymore?" Her words cut me like a knife.
I hadn't even noticed the absence of laughter until she said it. I touched her hair, forcing a smile. "I'm just tired, sweetheart." But she looked at me longer, her eyes too sharp for her age, and I knew she didn't believe me. The truth was, I wasn't tired. I was dying inside. My son, younger but equally observant, began clinging to me more often. He would ask me if I was okay, if I was sad. I brushed it off, kissed his forehead, told him I was fine. But I wasn't. And somehow deep down, I think he knew. Meanwhile, my husband carried on as if nothing had changed. Or maybe he knew I had found out and simply didn't care. He came home late, sometimes smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't mine. He spoke less and less to me, but more often to his phone, smiling in a way he hadn't smiled at me in years. I wanted to scream, to throw the phone at him and shout, "How dare you? How dare you betray me after all these years, after all the sacrifices I made, after giving you my youth, my body, my loyalty?" But I stayed silent, because silence was safer, because confrontation meant answers I wasn't ready to hear. And so I began to shrink. I stopped dressing up the way I used to. Why bother when the man I wanted to notice me already saw someone else? I stopped cooking his favorite meals. He barely noticed anyway. I stopped looking in the mirror because the woman staring back felt like a stranger. Hollow eyes, lines of exhaustion etched deeper every day. Friends began asking questions too. "You never come out with us anymore. Are you and your husband okay?" I always gave the same answer. "I'm just busy." Busy. Yes, busy holding together the crumbling pieces of a marriage no one else could see was falling apart. The nights were the hardest. When the house grew quiet, when the children were asleep, I would curl up on my side of the bed, tears soaking my pillow while he slept soundly inches away from me. Sometimes his phone buzzed on the nightstand, and I would bite my lip to stop myself from picking it up again. I didn't need to. I already knew what I would find. There's a strange kind of cruelty in betrayal. It makes you doubt not just your partner, but yourself. I started asking questions that ate away at me. What does she have that I don't? Am I not beautiful anymore? Did I stop being interesting? Did I give too much of myself to the children and forget to be a wife? The more I asked, the smaller I felt. And the smaller I felt, the more he seemed to tower above me, with his secrets, his coldness, his double life. And yet, I still couldn't let go. I would watch him laugh with the children and think, this is why I stay. This is why I can't destroy our family. They need him. They need us. But each time I thought this, another part of me whispered, "But what about you? Who needs you?" One evening, I gathered the courage to ask him directly, though not about the affair, just about us. We were sitting at the dinner table, the children had gone to their rooms, and the silence between us was deafening. "Are you happy?" I asked softly. He barely looked up from his plate. "What kind of question is that?" "Just answer me," I pressed. "Are you happy with me? With us?" He sighed, shaking his head as if I had asked something foolish. "You think too much. Just eat." That was it. That was all he gave me. And in that moment, I realized the truth. He didn't even care enough to lie. That night, I cried silently until the sheets were damp beneath me. But when the tears ran dry, something else filled me. Not strength, not yet. But anger. Quiet, simmering anger that refused to be silenced forever. Because deep down, I knew this couldn't go on. I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't keep breaking myself apart to keep the illusion of a family intact. But the hardest part wasn't knowing it had to end. The hardest part was knowing how. How do you confront a man who doesn't see you anymore? How do you fight for a marriage when the other person has already left it behind? How do you protect your children from the storm when the storm is their father? I didn't have answers. Not yet. But I knew one thing. Silence was killing me. And sooner or later, something inside me would explode. And when it did, nothing in our lives would ever be the same again.
Anger is a strange thing. It starts small, a spark buried under layers of sadness and silence. But if you feed it with lies, with betrayal, with neglect, it begins to grow. And once it grows, it demands to be heard. My anger had begun whispering to me at night, in the quiet hours when my husband lay snoring beside me, his back turned as always. The whisper said, "Find the truth. Stop living blind." So one night I did. He had fallen asleep with his phone on the nightstand, just inches from my hand. For weeks I had resisted the urge to check again, afraid of what I might find. But this time, the whisper of anger was louder than the fear. My fingers shook as I picked it up, the glow of the screen blinding in the dark. I scrolled quickly, my heart hammering, until I saw her name. Not saved as love or darling. No, he was smarter now. She was work. But the messages were anything but professional. "I miss you already. Tomorrow, same place? You make me feel alive again." Alive again. My chest tightened. Was I dead to him then? Was I just the woman who washed his clothes, cooked his meals, carried his children, while she was the one who made him feel alive? I dropped the phone back onto the nightstand, my breath coming in shallow gasps. Hands covered my mouth to keep from sobbing too loudly, terrified the children might hear. The next morning, I couldn't even look at him, but he didn't notice. He was too busy texting, his eyes glowing with the kind of joy I hadn't seen on his face in years. That day, my anger roared louder. I began watching him closely, memorizing his routines. He left home for work at 8, but sometimes didn't return until 10 at night. On weekends, he suddenly had urgent meetings. I started piecing together his lies like a cruel puzzle. The more I saw, the more my silence strangled me. One evening, my daughter found me staring blankly at the stove, dinner burning. "Mama, are you okay?" she asked softly. I looked at her, her innocent eyes, so much like mine when she was her age, and the tears nearly spilled. How could I tell her that the man she adored, the man she called hero, was tearing my soul apart? I kissed her forehead and whispered, "I'm fine." But I wasn't fine, and she knew it. Children always know. A week later, my proof became undeniable. I had followed him. Yes, I know how it sounds, desperate, foolish, humiliating, but I had to know. I had to see with my own eyes what my heart already knew. So one Saturday afternoon, when he said he was going to meet a client, I told him I was taking the children to visit my sister. Instead, I dropped the children off with her and drove to the address he had carelessly left on the dining table, a hotel receipt tucked between papers. I parked across the street, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. For nearly an hour, I sat there, shaking, praying that maybe I was wrong, that maybe he really was meeting a client, that maybe I was still the crazy one for doubting him. But then I saw him. He walked out of the hotel with her, a woman younger than me, prettier perhaps,
laughing as he held her hand the way he hadn't held mine in years. His face, oh God, his face. He looked alive, radiant, the way he used to look at me when we were young. And in that moment, something inside me shattered so loudly I thought the whole street must have heard it. I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened, my vision blurred, my body trembled so violently I thought I might faint. I ducked down in my car, tears streaming, sobbing, shaking me as I watched the man I had given my life to smile at another woman as if she were the world. I wanted to run to him, to scream, to tear him away from her. But I couldn't move. I was paralyzed, broken, destroyed. When I finally drove home that night, my eyes were swollen, my heart numb. I tucked the children into bed, kissed their foreheads, and locked myself in the bathroom. I stared into the mirror at the woman I had become. Lines around her eyes, lips trembling, hair unkempt, soul hollow. And I whispered to my reflection, "How did I end up here?" That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching him sleep peacefully, as if he hadn't just destroyed everything we had built, as if my life wasn't unraveling while he dreamt of her. By morning, my silence turned to fury. When he came to the table, I placed a hotel receipt in front of him. My hands were steady, but my voice shook as I asked him, "Who is she?" His face paled. For the first time, the mask slipped. But then just as quickly, he laughed bitterly. "You're imagining things. It's just work." "Don't lie to me," I snapped, my voice louder than I had ever dared before. "I saw you. I saw you with her." For a moment he was silent. Then he leaned back, smirking. "So what if you did? What are you gonna do, leave me? You can't. You won't." And the worst part, he was right. I couldn't. Not yet. Because the children were sleeping in the next room. Because the thought of destroying their world crushed me even more than his betrayal. Because after years of silence, my voice wasn't strong enough. But as he walked away that morning, his arrogance filling the room, I realized something important. He thought I was weak. He thought I would stay silent forever. But he didn't realize that silence can only suffocate you for so long. And mine was about to end.
There's a sound a heart makes when it breaks. Not a scream, not a cry, but a quiet shattering that no one else can hear. That's the sound I carried inside me after I saw him with her. For days afterward, I moved through the house like a ghost. I cooked meals, folded laundry, helped the children with homework, but it all felt mechanical. My body was there, but my spirit had curled into a corner, whispering that everything I believed in was a lie. The children noticed. They always noticed. One evening, as I set plates on the table, my son tugged at my sleeve. "Mama, why do you look sad all the time?" I froze. His little voice was filled with innocence, with confusion, with love I didn't deserve because I couldn't give him the truth. "I'm not sad," I lied, forcing a smile. "Just tired." But his eyes narrowed, too wise for his age. He didn't believe me. My daughter asked questions too. She watched her father more closely now. She noticed his late nights, his distracted glances at his phone, the way he avoided my eyes. Children may not understand betrayal, but they understand distance, and they could feel the ocean growing between us. "Is Daddy mad at you?" she whispered one night as I tucked her into bed. My throat tightened. "No, sweetheart. Daddy just has a lot of work." She nodded slowly,
But her eyes searched mine, as if trying to pull the real answer from me. And in that moment, I hated him more than ever. Not just for betraying me, but for breaking their trust too, for forcing me to lie to the very children I had promised to protect. At night, I lay awake listening to him breathe beside me. Sometimes his phone buzzed on the nightstand, and my chest would ache with the urge to smash it, to throw it at the wall, to shatter the lies it carried. But I stayed still, silent, tears soaking the pillow beneath me. One Saturday, the children begged for a family outing. "We never go anywhere together anymore," my daughter said softly, and her words stabbed me with guilt. So I forced myself to smile, forced him to agree, and we drove to the park. To the outside world, we looked normal. A family strolling, children laughing, parents walking side by side. But inside, I felt like a mannequin. My hand brushed against his once, and he pulled it away as though burned. Later, as the children played, I watched him from the bench. He was scrolling on his phone, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Not for me. Never for me anymore. And something inside me snapped. I wanted to scream right there in the middle of the park. "Look at me! Look at your children! Look at the family you're throwing away for her!" But instead, I swallowed it down, my nails digging into my palms until they nearly drew blood. That night, the tension spilled over. He came home late again, reeking faintly of perfume, his shirt wrinkled in a way that told me everything. I sat in the living room waiting, the lamp casting a dull glow, my notebook on my lap. The notebook where I had written down every lie, every late night, every receipt, every whisper of betrayal. "Where were you?" I asked, my voice calm but sharp. "Work," he said without hesitation, dropping his keys on the table. "Work." I laughed bitterly, tears already threatening. Work at a hotel? Work holding her hand? Work kissing her the way you used to kiss me? His eyes darkened. "Don't start." "Don't start?" My voice cracked, rising. "You've already ended everything. You ended us the moment you chose her over me, over our children, over this family." He stepped closer, his voice low, dangerous. "Keep your voice down. The kids will hear." And there it was, his weapon, the children, the illusion of family, the very thing keeping me chained to him. "They already know something's wrong," I spat. "Do you think they don't see how you treat me? Do you think they don't feel the distance? You're not just betraying me, you're betraying them." His jaw clenched, his eyes cold. "You're dramatic. Always have been. That's why I—" He stopped himself, but the words hung in the air like poison. "That's why you what?" I demanded, tears streaming now. "That's why you found someone else? Because I was dramatic? Because I gave you everything and it wasn't enough?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. His silence was louder than any confession. The children appeared in the hallway, their small faces pale with fear. My daughter clutched my son's hand, her eyes wide. "Mama, Daddy, why are you shouting?" My heart shattered. In protecting them from the truth, I had only given them fear. They weren't blind. They weren't deaf. They saw. They heard. They felt everything. I rushed to them, pulling them into my arms. "It's okay," I whispered, my voice trembling. But it wasn't okay, and they knew it. That night, as they slept huddled together, I sat in the darkness, my body shaking with sobs. I realized something important. My silence wasn't protecting them. It was destroying them. Every lie I told, every smile I forced, every tear I hid, it wasn't shielding them from pain. It was teaching them that love meant suffering, that marriage meant betrayal, that silence was the only answer. And I couldn't let them grow up believing that. The walls of my life were cracking, and soon they would crumble completely. But maybe when they did, I would finally be free.
There comes a moment when even the strongest silence shatters. Mine had lasted too long, through lies, through tears, through nights of loneliness. But when my children looked at me with fear in their eyes, I realized silence was no longer survival. It was surrender. And I could not surrender, not anymore. The morning after that fight, the house felt heavy. My daughter barely spoke at breakfast, her eyes fixed on her plate. My son asked me quietly if I was angry with Daddy. My heart ached as I forced a smile and said no. But inside, I was screaming. I watched him, too, my husband. He moved around the kitchen calmly, sipping his tea as though nothing had happened. That was his gift, his cruelty, pretending the storm didn't exist while I drowned in it. But I was done drowning. That afternoon, while he was at work, I sat at the kitchen table with a blank sheet of paper. For hours, I stared at it, pen in hand, my thoughts a whirlwind. At first, I wrote nothing. Then, slowly, words began to spill. Not to him, but to myself. I deserve better. My children deserve better. Silence is killing me. Over and over, I wrote until the page was filled with ink and tears. It wasn't a plan yet, but it was a beginning, a promise to myself. That evening, when he returned, I tried once more to reach him, not with anger, not with accusations, just the truth. "We can't go on like this," I said softly, as the children sat upstairs doing homework. "I know about her. I know everything. You're breaking this family apart." He didn't flinch, didn't even look guilty. Instead, he leaned against the counter and smirked. "And what do you plan to do about it?" The calmness in his voice was more terrifying than shouting. Because he wasn't afraid. He didn't believe I had the strength to fight back. "You think you can survive without me? You think you can raise these kids alone?" He sneered. "You won't leave. You can't. You're nothing without me." His words were knives, but instead of cutting me down, they lit a fire. Because in that moment, I realized I wasn't nothing. I was a mother. I was a woman who had carried life, built a home, kept this family standing even while he tore it apart. And I was stronger than he knew. I didn't scream back. I didn't throw anything. I simply walked past him, up the stairs, and kissed my children goodnight. But as I sat by their bedsides, watching their small chests rise and fall with sleep, I made a vow. I would not let them grow up in this prison of lies. The next day, I began searching quietly. I researched lawyers. I looked at apartments. I spoke in whispers to a trusted friend, the first person I had confided in about the affair. She held my hand and said, "You're braver than you know." But bravery doesn't erase fear. Each night, when I heard his keys in the door, I felt my stomach twist. I knew that leaving him would just break our marriage. It would break the illusion of family my children still clung to, and I wasn't ready to shatter their world. Still, cracks were spreading. One night, the children overheard us again. We weren't shouting this time, but the words were sharp. My daughter stood at the top of the stairs, tears in her eyes, whispering, "Please stop fighting." I broke then. I rushed to her, pulling her into my arms, sobbing as I whispered, "I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry." She looked up at me, her small hands wiping my tears, and said words that pierced my soul. "Mama, you don't smile anymore. I just want you to smile again." Smile. I had forgotten what that even felt like.
That night, after tucking them both into bed, I sat alone in the dark living room. The walls felt like they were closing in, the silence pressing against my chest. And for the first time, I said the words out loud to myself. I can't stay. I have to leave. But leaving wasn't just about walking out the door. It meant facing judgment, whispers, questions from family and neighbors. It meant explaining to my children why their father wouldn't be tucking them in at night. It meant stepping into a future I couldn't see clearly, with no guarantee of safety or happiness. It meant choosing myself, and after years of choosing everyone else, that felt terrifying. Still, the seed had been planted. The decision had been spoken, even if only to myself. The next morning, I packed a small bag. Not to leave yet, not fully, but to remind myself I could. A few clothes, some important documents, my children's favorite toys. I hid it in the back of the closet, a secret escape waiting for the day I found the courage to use it. He didn't notice. He never noticed anymore. His phone kept buzzing, his lies piling higher, his arrogance blinding him to the fire building in my chest. But I noticed. I noticed the way my children's eyes dimmed a little each time they saw us fight. I noticed the weight lifting just slightly when I imagined a life without his shadow. I noticed that the woman in the mirror, the one who had once been hollow, broken, invisible, now had a flicker of something new in her eyes. Not happiness, not yet, but determination. Because the breaking point had come, and I wasn't going to let it break me.
When you decide to leave in your heart, the world around you shifts. The house feels smaller, the silence heavier, the man you once loved feels like a stranger walking your floors. That's how it felt after I packed that hidden bag. I hadn't left yet, but something inside me already had. And he noticed. At first, it was subtle. He looked at me longer, as if trying to read what had changed. He asked why I was quieter than usual, as if my silence wasn't the very thing he had forced upon me for years. But then the questions turned sharper, his tone colder. "Where did you go this afternoon?" he demanded one evening when I came back from visiting my friend. "To see a friend," I said simply. He narrowed his eyes. "Since when do you have time for friends?" I wanted to laugh at the irony. He had entire nights and weekends for his mistress, but I couldn't have an afternoon with someone who still remembered I was alive. The control he once held over me was slipping, and he could feel it. He started coming home earlier, hovering around me, pretending to care about the children's homework, about dinner, about family time. But his words were edged with warning, his glances sharp, as if to remind me he was watching. The children noticed too. One evening at dinner, my daughter blurted out, "Mama smiles more when Daddy isn't home." The room fell silent. My son giggled nervously, but the truth hung heavy in the air. I felt my husband's eyes burn into me. Later that night, when the children were asleep, he cornered me in the kitchen. "What have you been telling them?" he hissed. "Nothing," I said firmly, my hands trembling against the counter. "You don't dare poison them against me," he snapped. "You think you can turn them away from me? You'll regret it." His words chilled me, not because I feared losing the children's love. They knew the truth in their own way, but because I realized how desperate he was becoming. Desperate men are dangerous. That night, I barely slept. I lay awake, listening to his breathing beside me, my mind spinning. I thought of the hidden bag in the closet, of the papers I had gathered, of the quiet plan forming in the back of my mind, and for the first time, I thought, maybe I don't need his permission to leave. Maybe I never did. When you decide to leave in your heart, the world around you shifts. The house feels smaller, the silence heavier. The man you once loved feels like a stranger walking your floors. That's how it felt after I packed that hidden bag. I hadn't left yet, but something inside me already had. And he noticed. At first, it was subtle. He looked at me longer,
as if trying to read what had changed. He asked why I was quieter than usual, as if my silence wasn't the very thing he had forced upon me for years. But then the questions turned sharper, his tone colder. "Where did you go this afternoon?" he demanded one evening when I came back from visiting my friend. "To see a friend," I said simply. He narrowed his eyes. "Since when do you have time for friends?" I wanted to laugh at the irony. He had entire nights and weekends for his mistress, but I couldn't have an afternoon with someone who still remembered I was alive. The control he once held over me was slipping, and he could feel it. He started coming home earlier, hovering around me, pretending to care about the children's homework, about dinner, about family time. But his words were edged with warning, his glances sharp, as if to remind me he was watching. The children noticed too.
The next morning, I called a lawyer. My hands shook the whole time, but I did it. I asked about my rights, about custody, about safety. The lawyer's voice was calm, reassuring. "You are stronger than you think, and you are not alone." For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of something like hope. But hope is dangerous, because when I returned home that evening, my husband was waiting again. His voice was soft this time, almost kind, but his eyes were sharp. "Why can't you just be happy?" he asked, tilting his head. "We have a home, children, stability. Isn't that enough? Why ruin it?" I stared at him, my throat tight. Enough? Was betrayal enough? Was silence enough? Was dying inside enough? I didn't answer. I couldn't. But in my silence, he saw the truth. He knew I was slipping away, that the woman who had once bowed under his control was standing straighter now, her voice trembling but rising. And he hated it. The tension in the house grew unbearable. Every word felt like a trap, every glance a war. The children grew quieter, their laughter fading into whispers. And I realized the time for planning was almost over. Soon, I would have to choose: keep enduring this prison for the sake of appearances, or finally gather my children, grab the hidden bag, and walk out the door. My heart knew the answer. My fear fought against it. But one thing was certain: the decision would break everything. And once it broke, there would be no turning back. There are nights you never forget. Nights when the weight of every choice, every silence, every scar comes crashing down until you either break completely or you break free. That night was mine. The house was quiet, but it wasn't peaceful. The children were asleep, their small breaths steady in the dark. The clock ticked past midnight. I sat in the living room, my hands clenched around the mug of tea I hadn't touched, my heart pounding like a drum. The bag I had packed days ago was still hidden in the closet upstairs. Every time I thought about it, my stomach turned. It wasn't just a bag. It was a door, a choice, a future I couldn't yet see. I heard the door open. His footsteps echoed through the hallway. My chest tightened. He was late again, later than usual. I didn't need perfume to tell me where he'd been. He walked in, loosened his tie, and glanced at me. "Still awake?" he asked casually, as if we were two strangers making small talk. I didn't answer. He dropped onto the couch across from me, scrolling through his phone. The glow lit up his face, the face I once loved, the face now twisted by lies. My hands trembled,
anger and sorrow rising together like a storm inside me. Finally, I said it. I know where you were. His eyes flicked up, cold, calculating. Work. Stop lying, I whispered, my voice breaking. I followed you. I saw you. I saw her. For a moment, his mask slipped. Then he leaned back, smirking. So what if you did? What do you plan to do? Run away? Take the kids? You think anyone will believe you? My throat tightened. For months, those words had kept me chained. No one will believe you. But now I heard them differently. They weren't truth. They were fear. His fear of losing the control he thought he owned. I don't need anyone to believe me, I said, softly, tears streaming. I just need to believe myself, and I'm done living like this. His smirk faded, his jaw tightened. You wouldn't dare. I stood slowly, my knees shaking, but my voice grew stronger. Watch me. The air between us turned sharp, like glass about to shatter. He stood too, towering over me, his presence heavy. If you leave, you'll ruin everything, he hissed. The children will hate you. The world will laugh at you. You'll have nothing. I stepped back, my hands trembling. I already have nothing. You took it from me the moment you chose her. The silence that followed was deafening. Only the clock ticked, steady and cruel. My heart pounded so hard, I thought he might hear it. Then, a sound from upstairs. Small footsteps. My daughter stood in the hallway, her eyes wide, tears glistening. Mama? Daddy? My son appeared behind her, rubbing his eyes. Why are you fighting again? My chest broke. The children, my children, the reason I had stayed, the reason I had suffered, the reason I had silenced myself for so long. Standing there, afraid, watching the walls of their world crack. I rushed to them, pulling them into my arms. Their tiny bodies shook as they clung to me. It's okay, I whispered, though my voice shook. It's going to be okay. Behind me, he scoffed. Look what you're doing to them. You're the one destroying this family. I turned, fire blazing through my tears. No, you destroyed this family. I'm just trying to save what's left. The children clutched me tighter, as if they knew, as if they understood. And in that moment, my decision crystallized. No more hiding, no more waiting, no more silence. I looked at him, the man who had been my husband, my partner, my betrayer. Tomorrow, I said firmly, I'm leaving with them. His eyes widened, rage flashing. You wouldn't dare. But my voice was steady now, my tears drying into resolution. I would, and I will. The children buried their faces in my chest. I kissed their hair, whispering to them, Mama's got you. I won't let anyone hurt us anymore. The storm had broken. There was no going back. That night, as I lay between my children in bed, their small hands gripping mine, I stared into the darkness and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not peace, not yet, but power. The kind of power that comes when you finally choose yourself.
Morning came, but it didn't feel like morning. The house was dark, the air heavy, the silence sharp. My children were still asleep beside me, their small hands gripping mine as though they knew the storm wasn't over. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding with one thought. Today is the day. I had imagined this moment countless times, sometimes with fear, sometimes with guilt, sometimes with a flicker of hope. But imagining it was nothing like living it.
My chest ached, my stomach twisted, my hands trembled, but underneath all of it, there was resolve. I rose quietly, kissed my children's foreheads, and whispered, "Stay close to me today." Downstairs, he was already awake, sipping coffee at the table, scrolling on his phone as if the world hadn't shattered last night. When he saw me, his eyes narrowed. "You really think you're leaving?" he asked coldly. "Yes," I whispered, though my voice trembled. He set his cup down slowly, the sound echoing like a warning. "You won't make it without me." I met his gaze, my heart racing. "I'll make it because of you, because I can't die in this silence anymore." My children padded into the kitchen then, rubbing their eyes, holding my hands. They didn't understand the details, but they understood enough. They knew this house wasn't safe anymore. Not for hearts, not for love. I grabbed the bag I had packed, the bag of escape, the bag of courage, from the closet. My hands shook as I zipped it closed. He watched, his face twisting in anger, but he didn't stop me. Maybe he thought I wouldn't really go. Maybe he thought fear would pull me back again, but not this time. I walked past him, my children holding tight to my hands, their little fingers warm against mine. My legs felt weak, but every step was a victory. Every step was freedom. "Don't come crawling back," he spat as I opened the door. I turned, tears filling my eyes. "I won't." And then I stepped outside. The air hit me like a baptism, fresh, cold, alive. For the first time in years, I wasn't suffocating. I was breathing, truly breathing. We got into the car, my children climbing into the back seat. I sat for a moment with my hands on the steering wheel, my chest heaving with sobs. Tears blurred my vision, but they weren't the same tears I had cried night after night in silence. These were tears of release. My daughter leaned forward and whispered, "Mama, are we free now?" I turned, tears streaming, and kissed her forehead. "Yes, baby, we're free." The drive to my friend's house, the safe place we'd stay until I figured out what came next, was both the longest and shortest drive of my life. My hands trembled, my mind raced, but my heart felt lighter than it had in years. When we arrived, my friend opened the door with open arms. She hugged me tight, her embrace steadying the shaking in my body. "You did it," she whispered. "You're safe now." Safe. The word felt foreign, fragile, but as I watched my children run inside, laughing for the first time in weeks, I realized it was true. That night, as I tucked them into bed in a strange but peaceful room, my daughter asked me again, "Will you smile now, Mama?" And I did. For the first time in what felt like forever, I smiled. It wasn't a perfect smile. It was shaky, wet with tears, heavy with scars. But it was real. Later, as I sat alone with the quiet hum of the night, I thought back on everything. The lies, the betrayal, the silence that had nearly killed me. And I realized something important. Silence is not love. Endurance is not strength. Strength is leaving when your soul is breaking. Strength is choosing freedom when fear tells you to stay. Strength is looking at your children and deciding they deserve better. And so do you. I don't know what tomorrow will bring. There will be struggles, judgments, whispers. There will be nights I cry again. Mornings I question my choices. But I will never regret walking out that door. Because that was the day I chose life. And if you are listening to me now, if you are sitting in silence, swallowing your pain, convincing yourself you cannot leave, hear me. You are stronger than you know. Your silence does not define you. Your courage does. I am not just a woman who was betrayed. I am not just a wife who was abandoned. I am a mother, a survivor, a woman who finally remembered her worth. And this smile, this broken, beautiful, trembling smile, is proof that even shattered hearts can beat again.